Good morning and good evening and good night, wherever you are. This is Patriot Pravda podcast, and thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. We're coming to you live, or not live, I'm sorry. We're coming to you through the video now, Season 2, Episode 2. And we're trying out something new, trying out something fun.
Yeah.
Hope to make this podcast a little bit bigger than it was to begin with.
Yeah, we're going to be on video format now, not just audio. So we'll still do just audio as well, but just pay attention to what's going on, and we'll make sure that we get all these formats out to you as quickly as possible.
Yeah. So what are we going to talk about today, Luke?
So today we are going to dig into the failures of the Anchorage school district voting that happened recently here in Anchorage. I think parents in the local school district failed their kids as the poison of the transgender group continues to make its way into schools.
And on that transgender note, I'm going to be talking about the Scottish hate crime bill that was passed and became law in that country. And we'll talk about what's going on with that.
There's a Scottish hate crime?
There is, and it's very poorly worded and it's been taken advantage of. I've got some shocking numbers and statistics to share. It's
wild to think that people are having a lot of hatred against Scots. Interesting. But
yeah.
We'll see. That's today on Patriot Pravda. So we'll see you there.
Cut you down. Sooner or later, gotta cut you down. You would throw your rock or hide your hand, working in the dark against your fellow man.
All right. Well, we are back again, and this is Season 2, Episode 2, now on video.
Welcome. First things first, I think we should start out with the verse of the episode.
Absolutely. We will be starting out with our verse, and our verse today comes from Genesis 1:26 through 28. What does that say, Rob?
Well, I'm reading from the Amplified Bible. I'd like that translation. It's a little more, it fleshes out the translations and the words a little bit more. And starting with verse 26, God said, "Let us, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, make mankind in our image, after our likeness, and let them have complete authority over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, the tame beasts, and over all of the earth, and over everything that creeps upon the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image and likeness of God he created him. Male and female he created them. And God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth, and subdue it, using all of its vast resources in the service of God and man. And have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and over every living creature that moves upon the earth."
And so God had a purpose and a reason for why he created man and woman to produce and fill the earth and subdue it. So, it's not just imaginary or made up. There is male and female, and that's
across most of the biological spectrum, as far as mammals and birds and airfowl and fish.
Right. So, yeah. And God created it that way for a purpose.
Yeah. And we are not bacteria. We are not. There are male and female human beings, males, females, mammals, and bacteria is about the only thing that doesn't really fall into that category. But we're not. We are made in the image of God, and that is a great honor to hold.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to dig into what that means for us here in Anchorage currently. So recently we had our local elections for school board and for mayor. So what did you think of those results, Rob?
Well, right now I haven't been keeping the closest tabs on the mayoral or the school board election results, but I have seen some statistics about the mayoral election results, and right now it's going to end in a runoff election between Suzanne LaFrance and current mayor Dave Bronson.
Yeah, and just so people know, Dave Bronson's the current Republican mayor of Anchorage.
Also a Christian.
Yes, also a Christian man, and we don't say that to say that he's perfect or anything like that. All Christians are flawed. If you're a Christian and you think you're perfect, you got something wrong. But yeah, so he's following that standard conservative line of politics. He believes gender, male and female, are a real thing. He believes we should be protecting kids in schools, amongst other beliefs that we also hold as well.
Right, and I did vote. He did have my vote, but there's been a lot of smear campaigns against him too.
Right.
This past winter, and some alleged scandals that happened. But the advertisements from the opposition really painted him in a bad picture, in a bad light.
Yeah, claiming he didn't do what he could to try to save the roads in Anchorage, and he's trying to prevent kids from going to school, and because they're not taking care of the roads. When it's really funny because the local city government, I forget what the board of supervisor, I think it is, they were the ones that were really stopping things up as far as getting contracts out to get the roads cleared out. So they try to blame Mayor Bronson because he's the mayor and
right.
He's the guy in charge. But if you have a Democrat elected board, they're not going to work with the mayor at all.
Right. And that's the other thing we tend to forget, even across the country and even nationally, that a lot of things aren't, you can't lay all blame at the head of the mayor or the governor or the president's desk. Yes, there are a lot of things that you can do that with, like certain policies.
Right.
But when it comes to certain things like this, our road maintenance in the winter up here, we had a record amount of snow in the city this year. Almost 138 inches, I believe. And that wreaked havoc on the roads. And then last year as well, we had a lot of snow. But you can't lay that at his feet. I mean, he delegates those things.
Right. And you can tell that their arguments just an appeal to emotion when they come out with, oh, he's not doing what he can for the kids in the schools. They're trying to pander to low IQ, emotionally charged voters,
right,
to try to make sure that they don't vote for the guy because those people don't take the time of day to do some research and figure out why they're not able to get snowplows out or graders out on the roads to fix the streets. So, but now there's Susan LaFrance that he's running against. LaFrance, however you say her name, I don't care. But she's the current issue that we have to vote against and fight against here in Anchorage.
Right. And, sadly, I need to be a little bit better about, researching candidates. I knew that Dave Bronson was going to be the guy that I was going to vote for. But as far as the other ones, because there was about, I think, 6 or 7 on the ballot for mayor.
10
mayor
total.
10 total? Okay. And I wasn't too familiar with them as a person or their policy views. And that's on me. I'm outside of this podcast, I'm an extremely busy person. And so that doesn't leave a lot of time open for me to do a lot of research, but I should probably take up, at least cut out some time to do some research on those things.
Yeah, and that's kind of what a lot of folks on the conservative side have to deal with. They are the ones that are, I find, with statistics from both sides, they find they're the ones that are not spending their days as political activists out there, or living off welfare or not working for what they have. We're the ones that are working, 84 hours a week, 2 or 3 weeks in a row, maybe have some time off here and there. And so we're really busting our butts and trying to contribute to society.
Take care of our families.
Right. Take care of our families, help others around us, help the city continue to pay our taxes, being good stewards of our time, our money, and also doing our best to try to participate in politics as we should. That's part of our rights. But it gets hard.
Yep.
So if you are here in Anchorage, do your best, even if you are busy, to get involved, to get out there and continue to spread word about people we want to vote for. So as far as this runoff goes, Dave Bronson's the guy. You want to keep him in office. And all the issues that they keep bringing up and the advertisements, don't pay any of it any mind, especially when they start out with appealing to your emotions like
Right.
that.
Just it's almost becomes a moot point when they try to bring those things up. They're small issues, and going back to the example of the roads, there's other people that are responsible for that. And if you find out and you're dissatisfied with it, which a lot of us were, then put in a complaint with the board or something like that, or try to find out what exactly who's the person exactly responsible for that.
Right. Yeah, it takes a little effort on our part, but it's good to educate yourself and know what's going on. But secondly is the failure on the other side of the ballot, what happened, and that was for school board members. So we decided, we as in the city of Anchorage, decided to keep the incumbent folks that were running for Anchorage School Board in office, which does not fare well for the kids. And I'm not using this as an appeal to emotion. I'm just letting you know that the folks that stayed in office, folks like Pat Higgins and his crew, they are all for all this transgender, equality, men and women sports stuff. Forget what Title IX says, and they're all in support of this. So we have to make sure that we're careful. And next time we get to vote those people out of office, please.
Agreed.
And speaking of, there was a recent House bill that came out that they're discussing. They just had a judiciary committee hearing in the House here in Alaska, and they are discussing what it means to have men in women's sports and things like that. So the House bill that recently came out, that was sponsored by Representative Jamie D. Allard, which is the House representative from Eagle River, which is part of the greater Anchorage area municipality. She put together House Bill 183 as designate sex for school-sponsored sports. So this bill would require the students to participate in sports according to their biological sex, not their gender expression or whatever frivolous term we want to use nowadays.
Right.
So that's that.
And that's why we also picked that verse today. Our grounding is in the scriptures, and so we need to take things back to that. But also, if you want to look at it scientifically, biologically, it's just you're a man, you're a man. You're a woman, you're a woman.
Right. And so, Jamie Allard is a great example of somebody who's doing their best to actually fight for what is right. Although her argument is based on the greater idea of women's rights and things like that, which typically we would assume is more of a leftist talking point. She's kind of arguing from that side a little bit, but it is for a good purpose and a good reason, and one that is true, that women have no right fighting in sports against biological men when those biological men shouldn't be there. That's just the way it is. They're
just really prone to injury. It's not fair. At least the females versus the males. The females have a greater risk of injury. And so it can really stifle, especially if it's a high school girl and they get pummeled by, someone who's in high school, a high school male. Or playing football, like if it's the other way around, like if it's a female that transitions to a male and goes and wants to play football, that can end pretty badly.
Yeah, so I'm really hoping that this bill continues to push through and get the support that it needs. And part of that is on us, again, to make sure people reach out to their representatives, talk to the representatives, tell them to lend support to Jamie Allard and stuff that she's trying to get pushed through the House. So make sure we're all getting involved and getting out there and talking to whoever we need to talk to. Share this with friends and family and make sure you get out there and talk about this issue, because it's really important that we need to protect our wives and daughters and cousins and all those women that are doing their best to try to compete in that realm.
Right. And this is just kind of a weird turn on how the whole feminist movement has taken a weird turn into this.
Yeah, it really, the feminist movement
It's almost
really
anti-feminist.
Yeah, it really kind of shot itself in the foot, because those who were part of the greater third wave feminist movement are the ones that really began to push this whole thing.
Right.
And so it came around to bite them in the butt, and now they're kind of reaping the benefits, but it's okay. There are people that will come and save them in this whole process.
Oh, we can hope so.
But yeah, that is pretty much it as far as that topic. It's quick, it's bold, it's honest, but we have to continue to try to correct those things. So make sure you get out there and vote in this upcoming election. Keep Dave Bronson in, and make sure that you also get out and vote when it's time to vote for new school board members. So, and make sure also, just another quick last minute thing is get in contact with whoever your representatives are. I don't think people do that enough. And I know sometimes they kind of blow you off, but make sure you make yourself
keep hammering
heard.
them.
Yeah,
Yep.
keep getting in contact with them, keep getting to them, and they will eventually stop ignoring you and hear you out.
I think some people get a little overwhelmed too because they don't know how to find the contact information or the numbers, and usually that stuff is listed on state websites.
It is listed on the state website. So I can actually tell you, if you go to akleg.gov, which is the website for the Alaska legislature, the state legislature, it has the House and the Senate seats on tabs, and it's really easy to navigate. You can go to each of the districts. You can see what district, you can see mapping of what district you're in. You can see who's in that district, and it has all their office numbers, their phone numbers, their addresses. All of that stuff is super accessible. They make it really easy. There's toll-free phone numbers, so if you can't afford to pay to call them, there's toll-free numbers. You can reach them. You can email them. They all have an email link. You can email them directly. So it's really easy to make your voice heard to these representatives, because that's what they're supposed to do. They represent you. So if you don't feel like they're representing you, make sure you get out there and make yourself heard. So what do you got, Rob?
Well, today, actually this past Monday, a law, now this doesn't have anything to do with our country, but it has potential to come over here. Now, with our First Amendment rights, this type of law would be very difficult to get passed through, but there's always potential. So on Monday, a Scottish hate crime law took effect. And this is a headline from the New York Times. Scottish hate crime law takes effect as critics warn it will stifle speech. And the legislation expands protections and creates a new charge of stirring up hatred, unquote. Critics, including J.K. Rowling, author of the Harry Potter novels, said the law was wide open to abuse. And it is, because the wording of the law is very vague. And basically what it is if Luke and I are having a conversation about immigration or the stuff we were just talking about earlier with keeping girls out of men's sports or girls out of boys' sports and vice versa, all the way up to the national level, and someone finds offense to that, someone finds out about our conversation, or let's say we were based out of Scotland, this podcast, which we're not.
Right,
and,
thankfully.
And watched our podcast, found the content offensive, they could report that to the local authorities, and we could end up potentially serving up to 7 years in prison for just having this conversation.
Wow.
And other monetary fines and different things like that. And here's the statistic, all right? This is from The Guardian. Only 3.8% of hate crime law complaints authentic so far, says police in Scotland.
Say that again. How many of them?
So out of all the
authentic?
reports, which are about approximately right now 7,152 complaints, only 3.8% of those complaints are legitimate.
And that's funny, because that's legitimate according to their own standard of legitimacy.
Right. According to the police.
According to the law, the whack law that they came up with.
Right. Now,
That
here's
makes
another
it a
interesting
legitimate
thing about
claim.
the law itself. The law somehow, in the wording of it, states that white cis men are more likely to commit these hate crimes. And yet, further on down the bill, and even towards the beginning, it says that this bill, doesn't take into account race, gender, sexual orientation, the color, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the I believe he's one of the authors or one of the sponsors of the bill, a hate crime has already been complained against him or lodged against him.
Well, of course,
right.
They don't realize that all that they're doing is gonna end up cannibalizing themselves,
right?
Eventually.
But the reason that the hate crime or a complaint was lodged against him is because the wording of the bill, e.g., the white cis men, is committing a crime against its own self. Because it's not supposed to be singling out any sort of race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, et cetera, et cetera. So it's already the bill is already eating itself.
Yeah, and that's gonna happen, and I think it's a good thing that we are talking about this here, because even though it is happening across the pond, as we say, it doesn't take very long to cross that pond,
right?
Because all this stuff spreads because all these folks talk to each other and share these same dumb ideas, and once these things, they start finding ways for these things to actually have legs and being able to be enforced and work, then they start sharing how they did it, and then it starts to spread.
But we can thank God and our founding fathers that they made that rigid document, and our Bill of Rights, our Constitution, we have free speech, and that is a gross violation. I don't think you'd be able to set that law up that is currently in Scotland. I don't think you'd be able to set it up exactly the way here.
You shouldn't be, but I mean, the problem is they're starting to already pass laws in states like California and New York that if you misgender somebody, you can have fines and potentially serve jail time. So it is so far away, but man, it's only a matter of time until people get so lazy and they allow something like that to happen. So it's important to pay attention.
Right. And the other thing with this bill too is it's bad enough that it's affecting the common people just across the board. Every citizen in Scotland is affected by this.
Right.
But also, if you have Bible believing preachers and reverends and priests who are, really preaching the word of God as it is in truth, then those guys are going to be very targeted.
Right.
And unfortunately, if they're preaching the word of God in truth and someone lodges a complaint against them, such as it's against, God's, it's against God to be gay. He hates that. Not for gay marriage, transgenderism is wrong. The bill is going to look at that as a legitimate hate crime. And so these pastors and reverends and priests can end up in prison for that.
Right. Yeah, it's almost, I mean, not really. Never mind. I'm not going to say that. I was going to say it's almost like, during the Reformation, they were trying to impose certain rules and laws and things that these Scottish reformers couldn't say or do in the pulpit in disagreement with the crown. And a lot of these guys were, put to death and imprisoned, and it's like that in that sense that they're trying to control what can be said and what can be taught. But that's the only similarity. It was a little different of an issue.
Yeah. But we just have to be on our guard for this type of stuff. We just have to watch, and keep an eye out for this. And I really feel for the people of Scotland because there's a lot of people that have come up against this, and unfortunately they were ignored. Or just, disregarded entirely. And somehow this small sect or section of the populace over there has somehow rammed this bill through and gotten it passed into law.
The squeaky wheel gets the grease. That's what happens.
And the thing of it is too, you can't. There's official for these types of complaints. This is kind of funny. There's official reporting centers, and you can report them at the police station if you'd like. but also I'm not sure if they're like kiosks or if they're just like a form you fill out. But they have these reporting centers across their small nation. One of them being a famous sex shop in Glasgow.
Yikes.
So you can go in there and get your your pornography and your paraphernalia, and then, oh yeah, that's right, I was offended by someone's comment, I'm going to go make a report. So you can partake in your degeneracy and then also make a report about somebody at the same place.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's a completely counterintuitive system, and it just,
I'm waiting to see how long it takes for that law to fall out and be
Right.
repealed.
If it is at all, ever.
Yeah, because the police are already overtaxed as far as like workload. So 3.8% of these 7,152 complaints were legitimate, but they have to investigate every single one of those 7,152 complaints as a legitimate complaint.
Right, yeah,
You know?
and I mean, imagine they're so focused on defunding police. Imagine all the funding and
yeah.
what has to go into actually investigating all of this.
Yeah, they're going to have to hire, if this continues, they're going to have to hire extra employees just to deal with this. It would be a separate department per se of the police force.
and that's another thing, is because we create these frivolous laws, and the same thing
Right.
happens here in the U.S. We create these frivolous laws that requires an exponential increase in the size of local government
Right.
and federal government. And so they got to create a whole nother bureaucratic body that's going to take care of and handle the situation, much like the Department of Education or the IRS.
And that has to be funded, and who gets to pay for that? The taxpayer. So we pay for
for
our
it.
own, we pay for, like, these poor Scots are paying for their own investigations upon themselves.
Right, yeah.
Essentially.
You're essentially paying for your own prosecution under these new ridiculous laws.
Right.
And the same thing is happening here in the US. Same thing happens in the US, in particular to some types of divorce proceedings between couples. No fault divorce makes divorce so easy, but then in some states it's also a requirement that the estate pays for the divorce proceeding, and if that estate is primarily funded by the male is going to be paying for his divorce, paying for his wife's lawyer to divorce him, and potentially paying for his wife's lawyer to fight for her to have the right to take his kids away from him. So
more assets.
Right, more assets, as we're seeing in this whole big drama between Steven Crowder and his wife Hillary. They're doing what they can to put together a smear campaign to drain him of whatever funds he has and make sure that he doesn't have his kids. Yeah, and that's a whole big mess that we're not going to get into in this episode.
But that's the gist of it. I didn't want to dive too more deeply than that. It just gets really convoluted and stupid and complicated. But that's just the surface information on it. It has, like I said, been in effect since this past Monday, and it's already falling on its face.
Yeah.
I mean, not even 5 days.
Yeah, you said 7,000 reports?
7,152 in just like about five or 6 days, yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's just people,
mess.
it's too open to abuse from people who don't like somebody else. I mean,
Right.
They can, unfortunately, and the other thing too that I should mention is if you get investigated for one of these, and it doesn't turn out that you get convicted or fined or even sent to jail, there's still a record of you being investigated for a hate crime, which shows up on your background check.
Right, yeah, and they keep track of that. It reminds me of the red flag laws that they're trying to pass here in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those red flag laws, if someone around you either dislikes you or thinks that you have a potential of being an aggressor, they can report that to the police under these red flag laws, and the police will come and take your firearms away from you, even though you've not even committed a crime.
Right.
You've committed the crime of offending somebody or bothering somebody, and because of that, they're going to take away your rights.
Yeah, and they've given the Karens of the world or of the nation where those laws exist, the ability to just inflict pain and suffering.
Yeah, who wouldn't think that some jaded wife or jaded husband is going to use that against whoever they got an issue with? There may not even be any kind of proof of aggression or domestic violence or anything like that, but they're going to make sure that they bring up something that's going to flag that law and make sure that that person loses their rights.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be husband and wife. It could just be like you wore a NRA shirt into a grocery store, and let's say you happen to buy some alcohol, and they take your driver's license, and then they take your name and your address and all that stuff, and then they just send up a report. There's so many open avenues of abuse.
Right, and yeah, it's just the growth of just more dumb laws and giving more power to government to just trample on our rights. We're trading in our rights for a sense of security and safety. And according to founding fathers, at that point, we shouldn't have rights if we're just going to do that. If we're just going to hand these things off and say, well, I need to feel a little bit of safety, kind of like what we did with the Patriot Act, just handing over, with the creation of TSA and all this mess.
Right.
A lot of people believe that's a violation of our rights, and I think rightfully so, that they're just going to allow these folks to listen to conversations, NSA, things like that.
Right.
Wow, we're hitting all like the 3-letter agencies today.
We are. But also, as a side note,
they're watching you. Watch out.
Yeah, I looked up the word. Now, these all seem very draconian. And so I looked up the definition of draconian. It means of great severity. Draconian is an adjective meaning of great severity that derives from Draco, an Athenian law scribe under whom small offenses had heavy punishments.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunately that Scottish law is it fits draconian to a T.
Oh man. The destruction of modern society, folks. Destruction. We no longer have this line of, I was listening to a show earlier today, and they were talking about how we no longer in Western society have this line of, these countries are, third world, corrupt, dictatorship type countries that, that there's not. We're better than we are. That line is dissolving slowly.
We're all becoming equally third world very rapidly.
Right. Yeah, especially in this country.
Right.
We're allowing so many illegal actions to take place. California making, theft legal up until the point of like a $1,000 theft. Or is it $900 or something like that?
It's like $900 or something like that. But at that point, it makes no difference. And then the other day, I was driving down one of our main roads here in Anchorage, and I saw a homeless man about 2 feet from the road. Now, this is a major road. I think it's about 4 lanes wide, heavy traffic all the time, right near a major car dealership. And I saw a homeless man just 2 feet from the road, pants down, relieving himself.
Yeah.
Number 2 style.
Man.
Yeah. And that's, I don't know if, he's obviously had some a troubling life, but, there are opportunities to get help. But that just, generally when that happens around here, they might be picked up, especially for mooning traffic where children may be present.
Right.
But he'd probably be just sent right back out again in 24 hours.
Yeah, they get thrown into the system and then just get rinsed and recycled back out onto the street, and nothing happens.
Yep.
It's a slap on the wrist, get back out there.
Yep.
So.
But that about wraps it up for today, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A quick one today.
Yeah, it was really quick. We didn't really have anything too deep to go on today. Especially because we've just been our main focus has been getting this whole studio up and running.
Right.
And also, just so you can see, we have wall space and decoration room and shelf space. So if you have an idea of what you think we can decorate with, or what we want to add, or what you'd like to see,
send us a message. Email us.
Yeah, email us, send us a message, and we'll get to it. Pretty sure our email address.
It's been a while since we've done any sort of interaction with any sort of listeners.
Yeah, so I'll make sure that we get our email address out there. I'm pretty sure it's patriotpravda1776@gmail.com. So make sure you send us an email with some suggestions. Let us know, talk to us. You can find us on X. You can find us on TikTok, YouTube, all of your favorite social media sites or anything like that. And we'll make sure we get in touch with you.
Yeah, and without further ado, God bless
America. See ya. Bye.
Tell the rambler, the gambler, the backbiter, tell him that God's gonna cut him down. Tell him that God's gonna cut him down. Well, my goodness gracious, let me tell you the news. My head's been wet with the midnight dew. I've been down on bended knee, talking to the man from Galilee. He spoke to me in a voice so sweet, I thought I heard the shuffle of angels' feet. He called my name when my heart stood still, when he said, man, go do my will, go tell that long